Loves the law, law on the will, do what thou wilt. Shall be the whole of the law.
sense of what's going on? What
Don't panic. It's a speed up slowdowns, prevent crashes, and reactivate with just fine lines of code. So your customers can actually buy your product and you can get back to whatever it is you do for fun.
Abby, what's your sense of what's going on? What caused the delay, and is the truce back on?
Well, we don't know exactly what the delay was all about. It seems as though Hamas was just trying to tell Israel that it, in fact, is in charge and it will determine the pace of the events on the ground. That appears to now have been resolved. There were some negotiations involving the Qataris and the Egyptians, and the announcement has gone out from Hamas that they will, in fact, release those 13 Israeli hostages and an additional 7 foreign nationals just this evening.
So this evening, this is still going to happen tonight because families have been waiting for hours and hours, and you would know better than I. How quickly will all this unfold, you think?
It could happen in a matter of minutes. Israel has been at the ready to receive those hostages, just as it received the first batch yesterday, as well as to convey those Palestinian prisoners, convicted terrorists, who it has agreed to release as part of this deal. It is indeed incredibly difficult for the Israeli families who've been sitting in hospitals awaiting their loved ones over the past few hours. I'm sure they've been wrought with anxiety, and they're very hopeful that this deal will indeed go forward. It's important to note that Israel has said that if it does not go forward, if it does not receive, Israel does not receive those hostages by midnight, it will relaunch its military campaign in Gaza, and of course that pause in fighting will fall apart at that time.
We were speaking with Mark Dragan just last hour, and he said the success or the failure or the falling apart of the truce deal lies completely with Hamas and their willingness to release the hostages. Do you feel that's the case?
It's entirely the case. Israel has abided by its part of the deal. It has, in fact, released Palestinian prisoners, many of whom were convicted for terror offenses, including attempted murder of Israelis. It has conveyed hundreds of trucks of aid into the Gaza Strip, again, in accordance with its commitments as part of this deal. All Hamas has to do is release the Israelis that it holds in its custody. Again, we're talking about children, infants, elderly people, mothers, and babies, and so on and so forth. That's all it has to do. And so, yes, it is entirely on Hamas's shoulders to follow through on its part of the deal and ensure that this brief pause in fighting does indeed continue for the coming days.
Abby, can you tell us about the pressure on, the ongoing pressure really, on Netanyahu, the government, and the IDF? We've been showing our audience this massive crowd in Tel Aviv protesting, saying, please bring the hostages home. Is that still the primary goal for the Israeli government and military, or is it about destroying Hamas?
Well, those two goals go hand in hand. Israel has determined that those are, in fact, the mission of the IDF at this time. So on the first hand, ensure that Hamas never has the capacity to carry out a massacre like October 7th ever again, while at the same time doing whatever Israel can to bring those hostages home. In the Israeli understanding, it is the pressure on Hamas that produced this deal. And if the military campaign hadn't taken place, it is unlikely that Hamas would have acquiesced to a deal so quickly. The President of the United States said basically the same exact thing in his remarks this weekend, that it was the pressure on Hamas that produced this deal. We hope that it will go forward and that those hostages will indeed be brought home safely.
So let's say about a dozen got released yesterday and another dozen today, or more or less. The same thing on Sunday and the same thing on Monday. That's still not the full 240 plus people. So what do you think happens on Tuesday? Is it an extension of the truce, back to war? What's the goal and the hope here?
Let's first see that this first stage actually does go through as we anticipate. Again, just this evening we've already seen a hitch, which seems to have been resolved, but it is not unlikely that we will see similar psychological warfare on Hamas's part in the coming days as it tries to toy with the Israeli public and apply even additional pressure to the Netanyahu government. But yes, the question is what happens if indeed this does go through as planned. There have been discussions of potential extensions of this pause in fighting with the receipt of additional batches of hostages in the days to come. The question has to be asked, however, how many hostages can Hamas actually actually deliver. We understand that quite a few hostages are being held by other terrorist groups in the Gaza Strip, including Islamic Jihad and others. Some are perhaps being held by private individuals, basically as trophies. Will Hamas be able to convince them to hand over those hostages? Apparently, it has told Israel that it needs these initial days of applause and fighting to basically locate them, to find where they are in order to deliver them to Israel. But quite frankly, the most fundamental question is how many of these people are actually still alive? We estimate that there are a certain number who are no longer amongst the living. We don't know exactly how many there are. There have been estimates that up to half, perhaps even more, are no longer alive. And I think those details are really necessary to see what more can be achieved in the days ahead.
And what do you think happens? I might have asked you this before in the number of times you've spoken, but let's say the hostages are all released. What happens next in Gaza?
Look, Israel has been extremely clear. It can never tolerate an event like October the 7th, the greatest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, ever happen again. Now, Hamas has also been clear that it will continue to perpetrate acts like October the 7th until Israel is eradicated. It said that very openly. And so Israel has declared it as its mission to deny Hamas the capability to carry out a massacre of October the 7th by decimating its military capabilities in the Gaza Strip, showing that it's targeting only military infrastructure, denying Hamas the ability to carry out such massacres. I expect that that will continue once this pause is indeed concluded.
Enjoy head-turning offers for the laundry Black Friday event. Did you know everyday acids and food and drinks can wash away your enamel vital minerals? Pro-Enamel Mineral Boost enhances your body's natural remineralization process to replenish lost minerals with strong white teeth. Give your enamel a mineral boost.
The growing concerns in China as the country deals with the rise of respiratory illnesses, the World Health Organization formally asking Beijing for more details on the spike in cases. Take a look. This is what the Chinese hospitals look like right now, and you'll notice in these pictures that this is targeting the young and the elderly. Take a look at this article, came out 3 days ago. Undiagnosed pneumonia outbreak in China puts pressure on pediatric hospitals prompting questions. This came out on the 22nd. Look at the 23rd. What is the mysterious pneumonia outbreak in China? The WHO has asked China for more information about the undiagnosed respiratory illness that has spiked since October of 2023. So in the past month, we're seeing this beginning to spread. This is an epidemic in China. People are beginning to wonder, could China's child pneumonia outbreak spread? Here is everything that you need to know. Here's an article that has come out in the past 48 hours. Chinese hospitals overwhelmed with sick children after the surge in respiratory illness. Now, China has reported an increase in respiratory illness as it enters into its first flu season since lifting COVID restrictions. The WHO says the spike is being caused by known pathogens and does not pose a global threat. But a lot of people are skeptical. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Can we trust what is being reported by China? Do they have this under control? Is this simply a Chinese epidemic as a result of lifting of their COVID restrictions and exposure of weak immune systems after being in lockdown for so long? Well, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But I'm going to share with you the latest video footage and articles coming out in the past 72 hours so you know exactly what's taking place. But before we dive in, do me a quick favor. If you appreciate the updates, don't forget, smash the like button. Just takes a second. Helps out the channel a ton. Thank you so much. And if you want to stay up to date, it's totally free. Why not? Just hit the subscribe button, turn on that notification bell. And if you want to become a member and support the channel, I've added a join button. Just click it. And as a result, all of these articles will pop up in your YouTube feed. I cite all my sources. And even if you don't become a member, I still cite them anyways. They are all linked in the description below. But with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at this and get you caught up on the latest with this mysterious Chinese pneumonia that is spreading. Many people are wondering, will this become global? Let's go ahead and take a look. Alright, so as always, link in the description below this article. This is from the University of Minnesota. Came out on the 22nd, so 3 days ago. I'm going to scroll right down and get to the main point. 3 days ago, they said more information is needed. Now, the U.S. Center for Disease Control Prevention, or the CDC, background information on mycoplasma pneumonia infection notes that the bacteria typically causes mild respiratory infections that can sometimes lead to serious illness that can require hospitalization. Now, in children, the infection resembles a chest cold. The illness can spread in crowded settings, including schools and college residence halls. Now, We've heard that schools in China, there have been many children missing as a result of what's taking place. Now on Twitter or X today, it says, an infectious disease physician who is with the WHO Health Emergency Program said it's possible that China could be seeing a surge in respiratory infections as other countries did their first winter after lockdowns were lifted. She added that China has already reported a mycoplasma pneumonia surge, but the current outbreaks could be anything. She also said respiratory viruses, COVID-19, and flu could be contributing factors. The point is, we need more information. Now, as we mentioned, they said they believe they have this under control, and they believe they know the causes, that these are typical pneumonia spreads. But this is an article coming out on this 2 days ago. Link in the description below, and it says, what is a mysterious pneumonia outbreak in China? It says, as China experiences its first winter without the strict COVID-19 restrictions since the outbreak of the pandemic 3 years ago, a wave of respiratory illnesses is sweeping across the country. The unusual rise in cases has prompted the World Health Organization, or WHO, to prod China for additional information on the outbreak and seek enhanced response measures. Although the cause of this trend is unclear, some health experts are attributing it to a common temporary after effect of the lifting of lockdown restrictions, even as unanswered questions around the infections and the country of their spread have led others to draw parallels with the early days of the pandemic, and that is without a doubt one of the biggest concerns here. Are we experiencing a repeat of what took place 3 years ago? So what do we know about China's pneumonia outbreak so far? Well, on November 13th, China's National Health Commission reported an increase in respiratory diseases at a press conference. On Sunday, clusters of undiagnosed pneumonia in children in northern China were reported by the Program of Monitoring Emerging Diseases, or PROMED, a surveillance system that conducts global reporting of infectious disease outbreaks. It is unclear if this report overlapped with press conference information. According to the PROMED report, infections have proliferated in Beijing and the city of Liaoning in the country's northeast, which are 800 kilometers or 500 miles apart. On Wednesday, the WHO asked China to release information on the recent outbreak, including additional epidemiological and clinical information, as well as laboratory results from these reported clusters among children. Although official figures on the numbers of cases are not available yet, hospitals in Beijing have witnessed a surge in patients, especially in those in children's wards. One of the major hospitals in the city has reported that on average, every day, they are seeing about 1,200 patients entering the emergency room. Schools in Beijing are reporting high levels of absenteeism, even dismissing entire classes for at least a week if some students are ill, and warning parents to be extra cautious. Health officials are also worried that winter will exacerbate the spread of the infections after a warning from China's National Weather Authority that starting on Thursday, the country's cold temperatures will plunge even further. Now, why is pneumonia spreading to China? Authorities from China's National Health Commission attribute the rise in cases to the lifting of the COVID-19 restrictions. Health experts have also agreed that this could be the reason, similar to the lockdown exit wave that was witnessed in countries like that of the UK. China may be regaining an immunity debt after their lengthy lockdown, which must have drastically reduced the circulation of respiratory bugs and hence decreased immunity to the epidemic bugs. They added that based on the current information, there is no reason to suspect that the emergence of a novel pathogen and that mycoplasma pneumonia, the probable source of most cases, and the bacteria that typically affects young children, is generally fairly harmless. Chinese authorities listed mycoplasma as one of the circulating pathogens, along with respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV, and SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19. The WHO has asked China for more information on the recent patterns of these microorganisms. Now, while the presence of a novel pathogen is a possibility until more information is made available, the outbreak could also be due to an existing but newly mutated pathogen with modified characteristics and severity. Both scenarios would be a global concern as pathogens will cross national borders sooner or later regardless of preventative measures. So in other words, they're saying that yes, this could be a concern if it spreads further. What else can be expected from the outbreak in China? At their press conference, China authorities said that there is a need to step up disease surveillance and strengthen the capacity of health systems. The WHO and the medical staff in China have also advised people in the country to reinforce practices from the COVID-19 pandemic era, such as rigorous hand washing, wearing masks, and social distancing. In Liaoning province, people have been queuing up to traditional Chinese medicine hospitals, while patients at Dalian Children's Hospital have had to wait in line 2 hours, according to the PROMED report. Although the medical staff are concerned about this spike in the infections in people under the age of 18, they're also worried about the vulnerable populations, such as the elderly or pregnant women. You reported outside of Beijing's Children's Hospital as a steady stream of parents walked hand in hand with their children behind her. Experts have agreed that more definitive information is needed on this illness. So So essentially they're saying this could be a very contagious pneumonia that is spreading around and particularly hitting children. There's also concerns for the elderly, but they're seeing it primarily in young people. Now, what is pneumonia? Pneumonia is the inflammation of the air sacs in the lungs due to bacteria, viral or fungal infection, commonly affecting younger children and older adults. The infection can be due to illness are highest in Asia and sub-Saharan Africa, according to the food report. Symptoms tend to include chest pain, coughing, fever, and fatigue. Although the illness takes a toll on one's lungs and body, it can be treated with antibiotics when caused by bacteria. Recovery timelines typically last from a week to a month or more. Now, they are referring to this as walking pneumonia, which means that it's not as serious as the common pneumonia that a lot of people get, but they're saying that this is extremely contagious, and we will see as more information comes out. I'll be sure to keep you up to date here on the channel. Now, this comes as, in addition to that, we've also received warnings from WHO and from experts around the world about disease X and also about other viruses that could be spreading, and they're concerned that this is going to be coming sooner rather than later. A lot of people say that global pandemics hit once every generation. However, they're warning that we could be seeing something here very soon in the next couple of years. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, but I'll be sure to keep you up to date every step of the way.
For decades, Sweden was known for having one of Hallua, why not Theron?
Well, I've not slept for 24 hours, and I'm feeling pretty rough, but we can't let that stop us as we continue the adventure. Now, you Well, I was recently unceremoniously thrown into a Siberian prison cell. I said to myself, Benjamin, if you ever get out of here, promise yourself one thing. You will never, ever, ever visit a dodgy country ever again. And then I was released, and a mate of mine called me up and said, Mr. Balls, do you want to come to Afghanistan and meet the Taliban? And I said, sure, why not? Let's meet our friend. Hello. Ben, are we going to be okay in Afghanistan?
Can't guarantee it, mate, but let's go anyway.
He can't guarantee it, but let's go anyway. All right, let's go meet the Taliban. Which images spring to mind when you hear the name Afghanistan? I'm guessing not the most positive ones. It is, after all, a nation that seems to have been at war with itself and outsiders for millennia. But the foreign forces packed up and left in a humiliating retreat last year, and the Afghans, in the form of the Taliban, are in charge of their own country once again. And so I decided to use this no doubt brief period of stability to go and see places that tourists have not been able to visit for 2 decades, and try to understand this nation of warriors a little bit better. Join me in Afghanistan. We've arrived for our flight, which is Cam Air, which apparently is one of the most dangerous airlines in the world in terms of safety records. They're banned from Europe. But it's only an hour and a half to Kabul, so I think we'll be okay. Welcome on board. Thank you very much. Ben wanted a window seat so he could like film the views, but he's got the only bloody window. He's got the only seat without a window for him. Where's your window, Ben?
Flight time to Kabul will be approximately 1 hour and 15 minutes.
Lost in the past by Alexander the Great and his army on their march towards India. And then much later, many British explorers such as William Moorcroft, Alexander Burns. We are now flying over Afghanistan.
To Kabul International Airport on confirmed terrorist 2 p.m. outside temperature is 36 degrees Celsius.
Well, the airport is certainly much calmer than it was a year ago when there were people clinging to the undercarriages of planes just to escape. But I am nervous.
Movu Robotics is a unique new warehouse automation company. We're changing how every type of space is run. We're upgrading even the world's most challenging warehouses with the power of easier automation. We are Movu Robotics. No warehouse left behind.
I am Niall. I am a painter, poet. I do song and lyrics. I went to theatre art school.
Whew. We have made it through security. A lot of questions. They didn't want to let us through, so like, surely you're going onwards to Dubai. You're not actually stopping in Afghanistan, but we are. We're the only two people, as you can see, that actually got off our plane here. Everyone else is going onwards. But look what we're greeted by. Oh, wow. We've got a lovely I Love Afghanistan sign, and because we're in Taliban country, we've got the flag of the Talibs. Wow. Welcome to Sharia law, Afghanistan. You know what that means? No music, no alcohol, and no thinking about girls. Anyway, this man who works here is so shocked that we're leaving the airport. He thinks we're in a transit flying to Dubai, and I'm like, no, we're going into Kabul. He goes, no, not Kabul. It's okay? Okay. Not transit.
Kabul, Dubai.
No.
Okay.
Tashkent, Kabul City. Tourism.
Okay.
Holiday. Zindabad. Hello, my friend. Crikey. He can't believe that we're actually stopping here in Kabul. The guy made a phone call and he said, yes, you can go to Kabul if you want to. I don't really want to, but... Taliban flags. Yes? Ah, brother, nice one. Salam alaikum, how are you? You okay? Nice to see you. Thank you for coming. Sabtiga. Very good. Wow. Ben did find a guide. It's amazing.
How would you make to trust me? How do you feel?
Feel good, we feel excited. We are ready for an Afghanistan adventure. With you. Oh, thank you. What is this? Is it a Corolla?
Yes.
Yeah, nice. I had one before in England. Yeah, many years ago. My friend wants to find a wife here, so we need clothes to look like Afghan man.
Yeah. Good. I think it looks good.
Yes.
Don't take picture in
Like here.
yes,
Okay.
like here, like Ministry of Defense,
Oh, okay.
like police, like bases.
Okay.
They are not allowing.
Okay. So our guide told us we cannot film military checkpoints, military buildings, police, but everything else should be okay. Doesn't need much. I'm sure we can get a few sneak pictures. Oh my God! Welcome to Kabul. Whoa! Careful! Almost fell in a hole. Wow! Look at that! Look! Welcome to Kabul. Yeah, Muslim brothers. Okay, I've converted. Seems safer that way. Hope no one watched my last video. Wow, security. I would say we're the only guests. There's just no lights on upstairs. Where we go? We've lost our guide. Oh god, we might walk into enemy territory. What a beautiful hotel you brought us to. We've just been told by the manager that we are the only tourists from the west in the Safi... What is the name of the hotel? Safi Landmark. Safi Landmark. In the Safi Landmark Hotel. The best hotel in Kabul. So exclusive, other foreigners don't come here. It's too exclusive. Just us two.
Why I bring you here? Because it's safe hotel.
Okay, that's good. Inside the hotel, everything's safe.
Yes, everything's
Okay. Outside the hotel?
safe. Because it's main place of camioneurs.
Okay, we're okay. We're in the center.
Yeah, central.
Oh. Look at it. Sofa. No windows. Oh, bathroom. Soviet. Dildo. Hairdryer. I like it, my friend. Good room. We are twins. You and me are like, you're my Afghan twin. Why did your Brenner just show me in? And why is the hotel called the Safi Landmine? I mean, what are they trying to say? Wow. I mean, first impressions, Kabul isn't as crap as I was expecting. And, you know, I'm allowed to mention the W word, but do you see some knocking about? The W word. Women. Through the security doors. Back on the mean streets of Kabul. So this is where the trip begins. Let's see if we can dispel some images of Afghanistan. The people, the place, the safety, everything. Hello, my friend. Oh, she's offering me a rose. How sweet. So the words that you see on the Taliban flag is basically saying that there is only one God, that is Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. That's what the Taliban flag says when you see the black and the white. And here's an old truck which once had a machine gun on it, but now the machine gun is gone. Crikey. Zindabad. Haram. Music is haram.
Haram, yes.
Oh, if they hear the music, hello sir, salam alaikum. Don't listen. It's haram. Oh no. If the Taliban hear the music, oh phew. Thank God, now we can relax. Yes, we should park and go by foot, I agree. Wow. My God. Crazy parking place we've come to, because once you park, you can never get out. Look, everything's just double parked. Look at it all. That's it. People just leave their car and then go. I like it. Look at the old bangers. Bullet hole. I'm on my own. I've escaped the guide. I'm going. Assalamu alaikum, my friend. How are you? Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. How are you, my friend? Hey, Assalamu alaikum. Wow. Friendly people in Afghanistan. So, the first thing we do, I think, is change some money, change some USD into local money. Hey, guys. Change some money, and then And then we're going to buy some local clothes, some shalwar kameez, or as in India we sometimes used to call them Patani suits, named after the Pathans, the people of this part of Afghanistan who wear this kind of outfit. So we blend in. Whoa, this Van Sossa nobody. Pure Afghani honey. Maybe later. Wow, this is quite incredible, the layout of the city. We're obviously in the valley part of Kabul, but up on the hill, there are just houses everywhere, all the way to the top, and all the way on top of the hill is some kind of old fort. I don't know who built it, how old it is, but wow, it'd be great to go up there at some point. Reminds me of La Paz or somewhere like that. Just every square inch is covered. Is covered. Wow, got women shouting at me. Is covered in concrete houses. Check it out, all the way up there if you can. You have to be careful where you're walking, Carvel. One wrong step.
Hey? Yes. Thanks, buddy. They're cold, but I think they're cold from the machine. Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
the shit, literally. Yes, like this one. Yeah, the blue one. You see the blue? Yes. I should wear both? Okay. Careful. Wow. Man broke the chair. I almost saw the shopkeeper die. He's okay. I was close. This is my new friend. Salam alaikum. My friend. My Afghanistan friend. And we have some other customers. Let's step outside a second. Let the Taliban buy their outfits without disturbing them. Wow. So what do you reckon then? Do you think I'm going to blend in Afghanistan? You like it? You like it? It's okay? It's okay? Okay, good. Thank you, my friend. Now I look like a real Afghan man. Patan. Look, we're brothers. Afghan, English brother. Where is your outfit? He has trousers. Where is your patan? What? He doesn't have one. No beard, no outfit. What's wrong with him? Come on.
You want to buy this?
Yes, I want to look like an Afghanistani man.
Yeah.
Like you. I want to look like you. Smart. There you go.
So you choose such a
Right.
beautiful color.
Thank you. Yeah. Maybe it's too. Maybe I should have gone darker color. It's too bright. I stand out. What you notice walking down the streets of Kabul is the different complexions of the people, because Afghanistan is made up of different races: Tajiks, Uzbeks, Iranians, Pashtuns, Baluchis, descendants of the Greeks, Alexander. They all came here and mixed the gene pool, and so you have blonde people, blue-eyed people, dark people, tall. You have all kinds of people here. It really is a mix of races. Yes.
I'm Sam, and this is my tale of triumph.
And this is my tale of triumph.
And this is our tale of triumph.
So far, we've seen many Taliban everywhere coming past us on their bikes, scooters. But they look at us inquisitively, but they haven't so far stopped us and said anything. But everywhere you see their flags, and you see their guns.
This one is good.
This one's good. How much?
150 again.
Okay, deal. Hey, you have two. You have nice one too. Same like me. Okay. We are both Afghans. Hello. Thank you. Who said I'm looking nice? Thank you. I agree. Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Okay, the outfit is ready. Now I look like everybody else. The Taliban won't know I'm a tourist. They'll leave me alone. This is the beautiful Kabul River that comes down from the Hindu Kush Mountains and flows through the city. Look at it, it's beautiful, look at it. Maybe we'll go for a little dip afterwards. Oh man, worst traffic I've ever experienced in any country. Worse than Mumbai. Ben, where's the worst you've seen?
Dhaka, Bangladesh, by far, but this is horrendous. We haven't moved in half an hour.
We've not moved. I want to show you actually what the traffic's like. Yes, we've not moved in half an hour. I'll show you. This is the traffic. this edition of the Fifth Estate, scamming the system. The Bank of Canada is being robbed. Your tax dollars stolen.
Why has nobody been arrested?
Russian authorities in Kazakhstan.
On this edition of the Fifth Estate, scamming the system.
When they're sick, they get comfortable anywhere and spread germs everywhere. Lysol kills 99.9% of bacteria and viruses, even those that cause COVID-19 and RSV on hard surfaces. Lysol.
There's a robotic snake in space. I bet that got your attention. Well, there will be. It's one of the projects in the works by NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. The Exobiology X-10 Life Surveyor, also known as EELS, is still in development, but its technology was recently tested here in Alberta on the Athabasca Glacier in Jasper National Park. Morgan Cable is the project's science lead. Hello.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on. Now, a snake-like robot in space. Who thought of that?
You know, it's kind of a funny story. A lot of these crazy ideas for new types of technologies, they start with just a simple meeting, a simple interaction, and one of the original engineers who started the project, Kalen Carpenter, he and I sat down and we're just brainstorming ideas of how to get to the hard-to-reach places, right? So right now, NASA has these incredible rovers that are driving across Mars that work really well for navigating sort of smoother terrains. But as we're starting to look for evidence of life in our solar system, we're finding that life may be in the hard-to-reach places, you know, in cracks or crevices, maybe down in caves, places where traditional rovers can't go. And so we started thinking of, oh gosh, well, what kind of robot could we build that could reach those places? And that's how we arrived at this EELS robot, which, yes, it is a giant robotic snake.
So explain how this snake works.
This snake, it's a really cool idea. It's modular, right? So it has these cylindrical sections that each have their own separate rotating screw-like rings on them. And by rotating those in different ways, we can adopt different gaits. So you may see
How was the ride? Sliders strong, wow. Turn around and stick it up, wow, wow. Firefighter specialist, wow. Drop it down now, pick it up, wow, wow. 50 days into the war in Gaza, our focus this week is the propaganda at play. Israel should have the upper hand, but doesn't, and it shows. The death toll amongst journalists covering this story is unprecedented. 53 and counting. The UN Special Rapporteur, who has issues with the way this conflict is being reported. A temporary ceasefire finally came into effect this past week, pausing Israel's onslaught on the Gaza Strip for 4 days while hostages taken by Hamas were exchanged for Palestinian prisoners. The information war, however, continues, and like the battlefield, this fight is a mismatch, given the media tools that Israel has at its disposal and the largely uncritical treatment that it gets from international news outlets. And yet Hamas has been more than holding its own. producing a different kind of propaganda, often diminished or dismissed by Western media, but which resonates in the Arab world, and with more and more people in the global south. The Israeli government clearly realizes that international opinion is turning against it. It has tried to make this story all about the horrors of October 7th, rather than what came before and what has happened since. Because, asymmetry aside, decades of occupation and apartheid, followed by a war of vengeance that has killed so many Palestinian civilians, are proving to be a tough sell. 48 days of bloodshed later, a truce lasting 96 hours between Israel and Hamas has come into effect, giving Gazans some room to breathe, temporarily. The first pause in the fighting since October 7th, clearing the way for a hostage swap and the delivery of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. In the information war, however, there is no ceasefire in sight. The Israeli military has been cramming online spaces full of spin, claims of Hamas command centers beneath hospitals.
This room is an operational room that has communication with the hospitals.
And a copy of Hitler's Mein Kampf, supposedly, randomly, found in some Palestinians' home. Hamas has been producing its own propaganda. Some of it looks like it's out of a video game, featuring the daredevil tactics of its fighters, punctuated with monologues from Hamas spokesmen. The two sides have produced a barrage of competing claims, purported accomplishments on the battlefield, and ultimately, narratives.
The battle for public opinion in this conflict is greater than normal. The amount of international engagement here is disproportionate even to the size of the conflict. And both parties are very keen on getting their message across.
We know, for example, that Israel has within its military a division whose sole job it is to monitor social media. At the same time, there's also a lot of propaganda on the Palestinian side.
When it comes to Hamas, its message is defending itself for some of the actions in October 7th, but at the same time legitimating its resistance to the occupation and settler colonialism that exists in Palestine. And its message is coming across in the Arab world and Palestinian society very powerfully.
Israel would never admit defeat in an information war, but its actions suggest this one is not going its way. This past week at the UN, Israeli diplomats played a 47-minute-long film called Bearing Witness on the attacks on October 7th, the atrocities committed on that day, which included footage from Hamas's own cameras. The video is more than 6 weeks old, but the Israeli government knows that its disproportionate, inhumane bombing of Gaza since has swung global public opinion against it, that there is no way to defend the killing of more than 5,000 Palestinian children. So it's best to roll back the clock, rewind the tape, and make the story about October 7th and Hamas.
It's important for Israel to reiterate and demonstrate the brutality of Hamas's attack for several reasons. One of them is that there are still a large number of people who don't fully believe that Hamas deliberately killed civilians on October 7th. And by displaying this footage, it builds the legitimacy of the case. But there is another objective. Hamas's actions on October 7th were different to its other actions in the past. This was something more sadistic, something more theatrical in the way that the violence was conducted and broadcast to the world. And broadcasting these videos, showing them to the world, is part of building the legitimacy of that argument.
When it was first aired to journalists in Israel, people left the room and they were sick because it's incredibly graphic. And it's horrifying. But despite the fact that Israel has this ability and it has all of this sophisticated social media and propaganda, it does look like they're losing this war, and it's the reason why Israel is having to show over and over the 47 minutes of horrific documentary content.
The Israelis have this problem that they're being perceived rightly as engaging in brutal disproportionality and killing large numbers of civilians. It is a war of vengeance. And Prime Minister Netanyahu has said this on several occasions.
וננקום בעוצמה על היום השחור הזה שהם הוללו למדינת ישראל ולאזרחיה.
And when Netanyahu admits that this is a war of vengeance, he's giving the game away. Another mistake in messaging, much like Hamas's mistake of claiming they didn't kill any civilians.
Prior to Friday's ceasefire, both Hamas and Israel were posting combat videos. When that content finds its way onto international news outlets, the Israeli videos are usually treated as information, whereas Hamas's content, due to its status as a terrorist organization, gets labeled as propaganda.
These are Hamas propaganda videos from the perspective of its fighters.
One Hamas voice you will rarely, if ever, hear in Western media coverage is its military spokesman, Abu Obeida, an anonymous presence with a reputation for defiance through messaging that often includes a call to arms. He has developed a huge following among Arabic speakers. Most of Hamas's social media output was on the messaging app Telegram, but its account there is now banned. Still, the videos it posts get shared by its supporters and affiliates on Telegram and other platforms. From there, it makes its way onto Arab news outlets.
For the Arab world, Hamas presents a hope for liberation. It's a national movement. It's legitimate. There's a willing ear to hear those who are doing the fighting in the Arab world. The other important component of Obeida that he's generally covered with what we call the fam in Arabic, the Palestinian scarf, actually highlights the importance of voice instead of the image of the face itself. It makes it a collective voice of resistance.
He is a masked figure, almost a Rorschach test onto whom viewers can project their own desires, their own expectations. Someone who, in his anonymity, represents whatever you want that movement to be. Hamas is also adapting, like all organizations, to the modern age of digital journalism. You have a figure here who appears to be charismatic, to be dynamic, energetic, and I think to a degree that explains why people would prefer to listen to him than a spokesman sitting in a suit at a podium who may have been around for 50 years with nothing to show for it.
Hamas and its allies have been very, very good at combining the nationalism, the Islamic commitment, and the revolutionary ethos and charisma. A lot of those features are not really aimed at the West. They're not really aimed at the United States or Europe. They're aimed at the Arabs and the Muslims, and they've been medium effective. They've had a certain flair for those who identify with the concept of resistance.
Warfare does not get much more asymmetrical than the kind Israel is waging on Gaza. A nuclear power bankrolled by American funding, pulverizing 2.3 million people locked in an open-air prison. Israel is also far better equipped to fight an information war. It has a military unit that specializes in psychological warfare and a formidable presence on social media. There are dozens of Israeli news outlets, compared to the one news network Hamas controls, Al-Quds, which broadcasts in Arabic. However, the most persuasive case being made on behalf of Palestinians in Gaza is not coming from Hamas. It is the impact that Gazan journalists have had under the most dangerous conditions imaginable, exposing the horrors of Israeli bombardment. Their work keeps going viral, traveling the world, and it is a primary reason why, in the battle for hearts and minds, Israel has been taking a beating.
The information war is far less asymmetric than the military campaign. The scenes coming out of Gaza are placing enormous pressure on Israel, and if you look at other parts of the world, particularly the global south, South Asia, India, China, Latin America, global and regional television stations and newspapers in those parts of the world, it is the Palestinian message that I think is more widespread, more appealing to local audiences than the Israeli message. And I think that is a source of real concern for the Israeli government.
We are witnessing the rise of an anti-war movement across the globe. New people are learning about the Palestinian struggle, the horrific reality of Palestinians and how they live. I don't think, for now, Hamas is interested in engaging with mainstream media or in spreading its messages in the Western world. The Arab world sees in the Palestinian fighter a hero. They see a hope for the end of the occupation, and that's why it resonates deeply.
This past week has been one of the most devastating for journalists in Gaza, that in a war that's already been described as the deadliest period on record for the news media. Meenakshi Ravi is here with the details.
Richard, the toll on journalists during the war in Gaza has been like nothing we've seen in decades. That is according to groups like CPJ, the Committee to Protect Journalists, and Reporters Without Borders, known as RSF. The CPJ described October as the deadliest month on record for journalists since the organization began tracking stats back in 1992. And that was before at least 11 journalists were killed in Gaza in the span of the past 10 days, including Belal Jadallah, who ran a media training and press freedom organization called Press House Palestine. He was reportedly struck by tank fire as he attempted to flee the Israeli ground advance into Gaza City. This happened just a day after two other journalists, cameraman Hassouna Salim and reporter Sari Mansour, working for the Hamas-affiliated news network Quds TV, were killed in an airstrike. Numerous journalists, including Al Jazeera's own, have received direct threats from the Israeli army.
Israel has threatened Al Jazeera's correspondent in Gaza, Yumna al-Said, telling her and her family to leave their home or risk being killed.
Along the Israeli-Lebanese border, where fighting has persisted since the early days of the conflict, reporter Farah Omar and cameraman Rabi Al-Mamari for the Hezbollah-affiliated TV news channel Al-Mayadeen were killed in an airstrike. Israel said it was destroying terror cells along the border, but both the Lebanese government and Al-Mayadeen TV say journalists are being deliberately targeted. The total number of media professionals killed so far in this war now stands at 53, 46 Palestinians, 4 Israelis, and 3 Lebanese. The ceasefire will have temporarily stopped these numbers rising, but it is only scheduled to last for 4 days. As RSF has said, journalism is being eradicated in the Gaza Strip as a result of Israel's refusal to heed calls to protect media personnel.
Thanks, Mina. In recent weeks, there has been an alarmingly small number of official voices calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. One exception has been Francesca Albanese, an Italian trained in international law. She is the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories, and she's been vocal in one interview after another on the need for journalists to remember the context in this story and what international law says about the rights and responsibilities of the occupier and the occupied. Long before October 7th, Albanese was the target of smear campaigns and calls for her dismissal from the UN. Not one for being silenced, she has gone in the other direction, chastising the UN for its inaction. And Albanese has implored the media to do better, telling journalists they have a lot of homework to do.
The necessity of reclaiming a more humane narrative is categorically imperative both to protect...
Francesca Albanese joins us now. Ms. Albanese, you've been on a media blitz ever since October 7th. You are no stranger to the sensitivities around this story. But tell us about some of your interactions with reporters and editors since that day, the assumptions that journalists have on this story. What's it been like for you?
Hi, Richard. It's uneven because I have to say that there have been a few journalists who have really tried to do good job, good coverage, asking me sort of neutral questions to appreciate the facts. But mostly, I've had a difficult experience with mainstream media in the West because I found
This is the story of China's historic economic slowdown, and what the end of its decades-long boom means for the rest of Asia. the most dynamic region of the global economy.
Anything that happens in China has obviously a very large impact in the rest of Asia.
I think the region has every reason to be deeply concerned about the outlook for China's growth.
In this video, we'll look at how China's slowdown is transforming Asia's economic playbook and hear from the people writing its next chapter.
It was a combination of China slowing down and Southeast Asia rising up that triggered me to ask myself, so why don't I just go to the next frontier?
Also, we'll assess how US-China competition is complicating Beijing's economic woes, as geopolitical tensions loom large over the region.
Having to take sides, having to declare their support for either China or the US. That is a nightmare scenario.
And finally, we'll ask whether Beijing's handling of its downturn is tarnishing China's economic reputation. That's all coming up on Business Beyond. To understand the situation facing Asia today, we need to briefly look back at how China became a linchpin of economic growth across this region. In the late 1970s, China's leader Deng Xiaoping embarked on radical reforms to the country's economy. He threw open the doors to foreign trade and investment, and in doing so transformed the lives of Chinese citizens. Since the late 1970s, China's GDP per capita has soared from just $300 to nearly 13,000 today, lifting hundreds of millions out of poverty in the process. By 2018, the country's middle class had ballooned to over 700 million people. Some forecasts expect it to expand to 1.2 billion by 2027. The impact of China's rapid growth wasn't confined to just its borders. Many of the ships leaving this port in northern Taiwan are destined for China, and Taiwan was one economy of many across Asia that reaped the benefits of China's economic ascent. Those benefits came in three main ways: trade, investment, and eventually tourism. First, let's look at trade. China's population and cities were already swelling by the turn of the century, but China's accession to the World Trade Organization in 2001 turned the country into a trading juggernaut. Each economy shown here now counts China as their largest trading partner, from Mongolia in the north all the way to Malaysia in the south. That's nearly a full house around the region. China lapped up everything.
The China-driven economic, like China-driven commodity boom, also helped ramp up Indonesian export.
Beijing became the biggest buyer of Indonesia's coal and palm oil, and the top export destination of electronics made in South Korea and Taiwan.
If you even look at the island of Taiwan, I mean, China has been the thing that has happened to them in terms of, their economic transformation towards an export-driven economy.
The second pillar of China's economic power is outward investment. As the Chinese economy expanded, its companies as well as its government became bolder.
China has started to become an important outbound direct investor for countries in the region, as Chinese firms have set up operations throughout Southeast Asia.
This is Indonesia's new $7 billion high-speed rail, the country's first. It began operating in October. Its main funder, China's Belt and Road Initiative. Over the past decade, the flagship policy of Chinese President Xi Jinping has pumped hundreds of billions of dollars into transport networks like these across Asia. Funding infrastructure, but some say buying influence too. And the final factor is tourism. As China's economy took off, so too did its people, with millions of Chinese spending newfound disposable income on overseas travel in Asia.
Chinese tourists are our main customers, so the more the merrier.
Before the pandemic hit, China alone accounted for a fifth of worldwide tourism spending.
Beyond trade, we also have to think of tourism. Yeah, I mean, the transformation of Thailand as a tourism center is very much China-centric. Even Japan, for that matter, increasingly.
Decades of rapid integration mean China's economic fortunes have become intertwined with Asia's. So much so that the IMF this year said a 1% boost in China's GDP contributed to at least 0.
Yeah, what's up?
30 pints is how much in liters?
I'm not sure.
How much is it in ounces?
Not sure pints. That's British. Gotta check it out. No. $7.30. Pint. Pint. In Canada is 568 milliliters. It's more than a half a liter. But in the US it's different. In the US a pint is 16 US fluid ounces, 473 milliliters. So that's why some cans are 473. It's a pint. Goes by the with the British. Interesting.
So it's about a big, like when you buy the big bottle of water, it's about one of those.
No, a pint is less. So I'm learning today. Units of measurement, eh?
Advil Plus acetaminophen fights pain two ways by combining two trusted pain relievers into one tablet. Ibuprofen targets pain. Acetaminophen blocks pain signals. Advil Plus acetaminophen fights pain for up to 8 hours.
Now let's go to the UK, where a 13-year-old girl was called despicable by her teacher at a Church of England school because she didn't believe people could identify as whatever they wanted. They couldn't identify as cats, for example. That was one of the arguments they were having. Have a listen to some of that interaction.
But cisgender is not necessarily the way to be. You're talking about the fact that cisgender is the norm. That you identify with the gender, the sexual order that you're born with, or you're with. That's basically what you're saying. Yeah. Which is really despicable.
How? When it's, if I call my mum right now, my mum would sad. On my side. If I call my mum, she'd be sad.
So that's very sad as well then.
How is it? Loads of people do that. There's only a small majority of people who actually think that.
And why do you think we have so many problems in the world with homophobia?
Yeah, but that's not gender. I'm fine with lesbians and gay people. I've got nothing against them.
I mean, just how vacuous that argument from the teacher is, and she brings up homophobia, and the students very right.
A while back, I took note of one goofy boy who was on holiday in Afghanistan before having his holiday cut short by the fall of Kabul and had to be evacuated with the help of the British Air.
You deserve a bank.
always making. Us, not them. Every dollar, every day. Less take, more make.
Découvrez les nouvelles bouchées de crème glacée à la pâte à biscuits canne en sucre PC. Faites-vous plaisir.
This video was brought to you by Too Long. That's the official TLDR newspaper that we've made and which is available to order right now. Since Israel's bombardment and invasion of Gaza, more than 100 United Nations aid workers have been killed, the highest number in a single conflict in UN history. Addressing these concerns on November 10th, Israel's representative to the UN claimed in a stunning speech that many UN aid workers in Gaza were actually members of Hamas and attacked the UN as libelous.
I will remind the Council that Hamas, a genocidal terror organization, controls every facet of Gaza. Every number from the so-called Ministry of Health is Hamas. Many UNRWA workers in Gaza are themselves members of Hamas. The time has come to bust the myth of UN-supplied facts.
And this was neither the first nor the last time that Israel would attack the UN. In the immediate aftermath of October 7th, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres condemned the attacks, but noted that they didn't happen in a vacuum, prompting Israel's representative to accuse him of blood libel and demand his resignation. In fact, as recently as Sunday, an Israeli government spokesperson said that the World Health Organization was covering up Hamas's use of hospitals as human shields, and
few clouds or winds from the southwest. Around 10 kilometers per hour. Favorably shifting from the day, but still from the south. And New York winds above that 13 miles for tomorrow morning. And by the afternoon, the winds are high up 5 degrees and normal for this time of year, November for the time of spring. So on the mild side of things. Elsewhere, overmentioned in Dano, up in the Laurentian, temperature dropping below freezing, but tomorrow too, mix of 35 and 2 degrees on the plus side. Minus 3 to Mexico City tonight, 1 for a high tomorrow. More showers in Mexico City, less through summer. So yeah, mix of 35 and 2 showers. And now up to middle of the extended forecast, as I mentioned, we'll see very light rain on Monday with a high again still above average at times. Higher air moves in for Tuesday with -1, -2 underneath the summer cloud on Wednesday. In fact, temperature will be recovering close to the freezing mark as we get into the end of the week. And Montreal currently we are at 2 degrees. And tomorrow, 6:49 as well. For tonight, 42.
42 million. Did you play? Do they look big?
Do what look?
They do look big.
Well, because now they from the effect, but now probably not when you're wearing normal pants.
Yeah, I know.
But now because of the effect of how you're wearing
I know.
what
the
you're
leg
wearing above.
doesn't go with. But they're size 11. They are big, but this much only, so they're made small for women. Because normally I wear a 9. It should have been a 9.5. 9.5 was too. They didn't have 9.5. They don't have half sizes. It went from 9 to 10, and the 10 was just, which is weird. So I had to take an 11. They don't have half sizes, but you're supposed to have. They recommend that you always buy a bigger, half a size, just in case a full size, so that you have space for your socks because of the steel toe, which doesn't allow room for the foot because it doesn't expand. Where do you do that?
There's no why.
Okay, just a habit. Even though they're lighter, they're still heavy. So they're working. Get used to them.
Dream has come true for her, her mother, and her younger.
Well, let's recap again all of the latest developments we've been hearing out of Israel and the occupied territories. The expected exchange of a second group of Israeli captives and Palestinian prisoners has apparently been delayed. The military wing of Hamas says the exchange won't happen until Israel adheres to the ceasefire agreement reached between the two sides and allows aid trucks to enter northern Gaza. Marwan Bishara is Al Jazeera's senior political analyst and joins me again here in the studio. Marwan, these are incredibly sensitive moments, aren't they? We've all been on the lookout for the potential stumbling blocks, the tension points in this complex choreography. Now, potentially something is afoot, a delay in the handover of captives. We thought it was underway. Hamas now saying, no, we're holding on to them because Israel hasn't adhered to the terms of the deal in sending aid to northern Gaza. What is happening at the moment behind the scenes to try and resolve this? How are they even contacting each other? How are they even talking about it?
Well, my understanding is that the Qataris now are directly involved in what is going on, and probably not just here, it's also over there. But also, there's clear violations apparently of the agreement, and I think one of the things I've seen, which I think probably would invoke or provoke Hamas into taking such a decision, and that is that the aid is not reaching northern Gaza. I mean, the fact that this whole entire enterprise, I'm talking about the deal, was made in order to release few prisoners in the West Bank and Jerusalem, that's a bit of a thin one, right? Considering that the entire West Bank is held hostage to Israel, and that it just held, arrested, imprisoned some 3,000 Palestinians, right? So the issue for Hamas in Gaza is about the humanitarian aid. And they agreed on to 300 trucks a day. But clearly something is happening with that. It's not well, especially the idea of that aid reaching those who need it most in the north. Now, why are there a lot of people still, or some people still in the north? I've seen one image today that, for me, gave me that clear answer. Young man, bandage all over, but walking around with tubes out of him, with someone carrying the whatever it is that they do for whatever reason, and walking from the north to the south, because there are no ambulances to take him. I can imagine that there are countless number of sick people, old people, and other kinds of people who just cannot make it to the south. Those people are in bad need of anything from drinking water to food.
Well, Mads Gilbert, we just heard it there, talked about the needs in the north. He said there is not a single remaining functioning medical facility. 500,000 people there, many of them extremely patients still stuck in those non-functioning hospitals and no aid reaching.
Absolutely, and one wonders about the functionality of those hospitals moving forward. Because my understanding is that, contrary to the images that we've seen, the Israelis presumably bringing new equipment that apparently the hospitals didn't need at the time, 27th of October. Now we hear Palestinian reports about the Israeli military ransacking the hospitals. I mean, clearly the message here, Jonah, is that the Israelis don't want to leave anything functional. They want to destroy the entire civic structure in northern Gaza, perhaps later southern Gaza, in order to make it uninhabitable, unlivable. They just want to make sure that people simply would not be able to bear living anymore in the north. So when we talk about collective punishment as a war crime, when we talk about collective punishment as genocide, when we talk about the unraveling genocide, that's what we mean. Starving people, rendering people unable even to drink water. And we just saw the reports about diarrhea. Now we're talking about tens of thousands of any such cases. That's just incredulous. The idea that Israel could, with such impunity, under the cover of the deal, to be able to continue to carry arrests in the West Bank, to continue to starve people in Gaza, right? That's certainly a violation of some sort. It's first and foremost, for me, as an analyst, it's a violation of basic human decency, let alone violation of international law, war crime, collective punishment, and so on and so forth. And it's certainly a violation of the deal if the deal is to let aid into Gaza.
Oh, and it was striking listening to an interview conducted earlier by Nida Ibrahim at the outside Offa prison, where a gentleman described the ceasefire deal as a victory for the Palestinian resistance. We've heard similar sentiments from the Israeli side, who want to portray this ceasefire deal as their victory. They have subdued Gaza. They have brought Hamas to heel and forced them to release some captives. Both sides claiming victory. You talked about the point of this ceasefire deal. What are the interests of both sides in preserving this ceasefire?
You know, it's interesting that you say both sides, and we need to dissect that. What do we mean by both sides, right? Because clearly the interests of the captives is not anymore the interest of the Netanyahu government. In fact, it wasn't from the very beginning. We know for a fact that Hamas did consider those captives, at least the hostage, the civilian amongst them, that they were guests, and they wanted to get rid of them as soon as possible. And so Israel did not need to go through 40 plus days of warfare, of war crimes, in order to get those released, because Hamas wanted to get them released for minimum requirements and return. What Hamas will insist on huge return would be the release of the soldiers. That's a whole other game. But the release of foreigners and Thai workers and old people and young people, Hamas wanted to do that from the beginning. So Israel's claim that it's only under the pressure of war that Hamas wanted to release that, that's humble. Two, I think Hamas can declare political achievement in this deal, because it proved to the world, one, that it's still capable after 50 days of war crimes to have a command over its militants, be able to ensure the safety and the well-being of the hostages, the captives. And I was just reading, this is probably important for our viewers around the world who don't read Hebrew, I was just reading the Hebrew website, Wallah, in Israel, the main website in Hebrew in Israel, reporting about the relatives of the released hostages, captives from Israel, and those are relaying what their family members who were held by Hamas are saying. And their testimony is that those captives were very well treated throughout their almost 50 days of captivity. With the exception of the very few hours until they were brought into Gaza, later on it seems like they were actually treated like guests. And the entire Israeli Hezbollah, the entire Israeli public relation deception, from the decapitation of babies through the evil that's gonna befall over the captives, that's all is proving once again to be just that, propaganda, and it is totally untrue. So in a sense, Hamas was able to reveal a certain thing and was able to withstand, steadfast, vis-a-vis the Israeli aggression. But the people of Gaza paid a huge price for this. Hamas might want to declare temporary victory, but no, the people of Gaza are not victorious today. The people of Gaza were not party to this necessarily. The people of Gaza are innocent, unlike what the Israeli president says.
Very hard to see what Hamas does with any political capital it may gain in any of this. We'll talk about that later, perhaps. Thanks, Marwan. Let's bring in the Israel Defense Forces spokesperson, Major Doron Spielman, who also serves in the IDF reserves. Tell us about this prisoner release. 17 released, we understand. Is that the extent of it for today?
Thank you for having me, John. We are certainly on the verge of celebration as those hostages, the 17, you are correct, 13 Israelis, many of them young children who were snatched from their bed, and 4 Thailandese civilians are being returned into Israel as we speak. They're crossing over the border. They're going to be heading into having medical checks and then brought to hospitals where they are going to be reunited with their families. And this is really a mixed emotion, because on one hand, they're going to be embraced by their families, by the state of Israel, and on the other hand, a number of these children, their family members have been killed, and they actually don't have that information. So there is a tragedy that is really locked in with this joy, and it's just the symbol of the tragedy that Hamas inflicted upon Israel. But we're happy to begin getting our people home.
It is my understanding that the convoy of the former hostages is now on Israeli territory, so that is very, very good news. But we're still talking about relatively small numbers compared to the roughly 230 hostages that were originally taken. Only about a little over 10% have been released now.
Absolutely. The vast majority of our people are still inside those tunnels, deep inside the belly of the earth. We don't know if they are alive. We don't know if they're dead. Hamas has refused to allow the Red Cross to check them. Again, this is a heinous, imagine what these people are going through. They haven't seen the light of day. We don't know their health. And just being kept there is inhumane. It's a violation of human rights. It's a war crime. And we have said, and we're very, very clear, we're committed to this framework to bring home as many hostages as we can, as it allows. We will do whatever we need to do to bring home all of our hostages. For us, this is a pause. Our military objectives to destroy Hamas are not only on the table, we're committed to this, because all of our people have to come home, and we have to make sure, John, that this can never, ever happen again. Not to us, and not to anyone else.
We haven't really spoken about this, but Palestinian prisoners were released from Israeli custody as part of this deal, correct? Can you tell us about who they are?
Absolutely. There's a vast difference here. We are talking about Israeli hostages that were snatched from their beds in the middle of the night. The prisoners that we are releasing are all have associations with either terrorism or very security-based criminal activity. We are releasing people who you wouldn't want your children playing with. These are people who have thrown Molotov cocktails, have stabbed people, have attempted murder, and have associations with Hamas and other terror-related groups. It's a painful thing for us to be able to allow them to go back into society, because we're afraid that they'll carry this out again, but it's a price that we're willing to pay. We hope that they are going to try to live a life of hope, but it's what we're willing to pay in order to bring our people home.
So do you know anything about the status of future hostage negotiations, future releases?
We do. We are committed to the agreement, the framework that is being ushered by Egypt, by Qatar, of course, with the involvement of the United States, says that over the next 2 days there's going to be a continual round of the release
Israeli hostages that are being held. We're expecting 13 more tomorrow, hopefully 13 more the following day, and we're just waiting for our people to come home. And each of these waves, John, is a journey unto itself. These people, their journey has just begun. Just the mental therapy, the psychological process that they're going to need to go through, not only dealing with family members who've been killed, they actually don't know about October 7th. They don't understand what has happened. They don't understand the gravity and the scale of this attack. This is going to take months, if not years, for these people to reintegrate into society and hopefully live positive lives.
Obviously, the number of Israeli hostages is huge and far outweighs those of any other country. But obviously, I'm reporting for an American-based news channel. So far, American hostages continue to be held. No releases yet. Do you have any idea why that is?
You know, we have, of course, wondered the same thing on the Israeli side. We want the release of all of these hostages completely. Why we have not seen these American hostages come home is
Most businesses juggle different commercial cards for fuel, paying vendors, and even travel. That seems crazy. Well, Corpay's single commercial card is so smart, it does it all. Corpay, the smarter payments company.
Let's bring in Steve Doherty, Executive Director of Youth Without Shelter. Steve, welcome. Good to have you here with us today.
Thank you for having me, Renee.
Now, your organization is not directly involved with this encampment. But that being said, how much of an increase have you seen in these types of shelters?
Well, they're springing up all over the city. They have been for some time, especially since the start of COVID lockdowns. But we're having more and more youth coming into our shelter talking about the fact that they've left these encampments because of the safety issues. Not only the assaults, robberies, the fires that are happening. It's a really unsafe condition, according to what the youth are telling us.
Right. Now, those living in the encampment say it's a community for them, and having to move, what does that do to their sense of safety and comfort?
Well, yeah, that's the real fine line that you have to look at. 8 of the 9 people that were present were moved into shelter hotel sites. Hats off to Lord Tanner and the whole team at Shelter Support and Housing Administration in Toronto for allowing these people to move into safe places to be with full wraparound supports, as well as access to housing benefits as well.
How would you say the city handled the clearing?
This time, I think the city got it right. There's been hundreds of contact with streets to home workers. They did it well. They let people know what was happening. Mayor Chow, I think, did a great job with that. And
Let's start Lefty's Losing It in Lefty Heartland of DC. And here we're going to see a man in a dress chanting for Palestine.
Free, free! Palestine! Free, free! Palestine! Free, free! Palestine! Free, free! Palestine! Free, free! Palestine!
Now, I do not have to tell our learned viewers what would happen to that man, or any man, in a dress if he walked down any street in Gaza. It would not end well and prove what these people don't seem to understand, that the only place in the Middle East where
Whoever amongst you sees an evil deed, whoever amongst you sees something wrong, whoever amongst you sees persecution, whoever amongst you sees oppression, as a Muslim it is a duty to act against it.
freedom celebrations started in Argentina this week with the landslide victory of Javier Milei. This came after years of far-left Peronist rule, which has plunged the country into crisis, with the inflation rate hitting 143% earlier this month. Argentina has gone from a wealthy nation with an enviable standard of living to one destroyed by socialist lunacy. That's why firebrand Javier Milei, a conservative, a libertarian, a vehemently anti-socialist, anti-woke outsider, won the presidential election in a landslide. It wasn't close, folks, not close at all. Now, the world's media went into a predictable meltdown, similar to when Italy's centre-right Giorgia Meloni was elected Prime Minister last year, but the election results show Argentinians, including young Argentinians importantly, have finally woken up to the lunacy of watching close to half the population live in poverty, despite being blessed with abundant natural resources. Argentina is blessed with natural resources. Javier Milei is no milquetoast politician. He is a proud outsider who has been clear in his desire to tackle the bloated bureaucracy that has so poorly served the country. One of his campaign pledges was closing the central bank, and this weekend he confirmed that was an absolute non-negotiable. So let's have a look at what the rest of the bureaucracy can look forward to under Milei.
Turismo y deporte, afuera. Ministerio de Cultura, afuera. Ministerio de Ambiente y Desarrollo Sostenible, afuera. Ministerio de las Mujeres y Género y Diversidad, afuera. Ministerio de Obras Públicas, afuera. Aunque te resistas.
Even if you resist, it wasn't done there. There was more. But Milei understands well that the ideological battle in Argentina and the West is not limited to economic policy. He understands the left's march through the institutions, the anti-West dogma, and the tactics they employ to destroy their opponents.
Al zurdo no le podés dar ni un...
¿Puedes definir zurdo de...?
Todos los que, digamos, los colectivistas, los que ponen, digamos, o sea, esa idea... A ver,
¿Por qué le pones de mierda?
Porque son una... O sea,
vos mezclas...
Sí, no, pero que si pensás si pensás distinto te van a aniquilar. Ese es el punto. Es decir, vos al zurdo no le podés dar un... porque le das 1 milímetro y lo toma para destrozarte. Es decir, usa, digamos, o sea, vos no podés negociar con el zurdo. No se negocia. No se negocia con esa mierda, no se negocia porque te van a llevar puesto.
He needs to be more passionate. I just wish he just had a bit more energy about him. That's an interview he gave before the election, where he also spoke about how the left used the power of the state to crush their political adversaries. I don't know if he's talking about America or Argentina there, James. I'm not sure. Let's have a look.
Como los estamos aplastando en la batalla cultural, los estamos pasando de arriba, porque no solo le ganamos en lo productivo, somos superiores moralmente, somos superiores estéticamente, somos mejores en todo, y les duele. Entonces, como no pueden pelear con las herramientas legítimas, se apalancan en el aparato represivo del Estado, poniendo torres de guita para hacernos mierda, y aún así no.
Since they can't beat us with real arguments, they use the repressive apparatus of the state to destroy us. Apparatus, it's a big word. Yeah, he's not just talking about Argentina there. You can see that happening in many parts of the West.
¿En qué locura estamos viviendo? La locura de la corrección política estúpida, donde básicamente, no, si ustedes no recitan el socialismo cool, si ustedes no son woke, entonces son violentos, son un peligro para la democracia. Vamos, muchacho.
Muchacho. We'll see in the fullness of time whether he delivers on the comprehensive reforms he has promised, or whether the apparatus of the state frustrates his agenda. But it would be folly to dismiss Milei as just some extreme far-right snake oil salesman as The Guardian has. They're really not coping too well with him this week at all. Now, Javier Milei may be colourful, but he's also a man of deep conviction with an impressive command of language. Just look at this.
Van a tener que vivir como viven los argentinos de bien. Se les acabó los privilegios, se acabó la joda. Yo no vine acá a guiar corderos, Vine a despertar leones y están despertando. Están despertando. Y se van a comer crudos los políticos chorros. Se van a comer crudos los empresarios prebendarios. Se van a comer crudos los sindicalistas que entregan a la gente. Se van a comer crudo a los medios de comunicación que fueron funcionales a todos estos chorros para mantener este curro.
I did not come here to guide lands, I came to awaken lions. He went on to say the Argentinian people are waking up and choosing liberty over slavery. As I said, time will tell if he delivers on his bold agenda, but it's worth noting the unhinged media coverage he has attracted, like Trump before him, and like Trump before him, despite being falsely labelled a fascist and a Nazi, Milei is ardently pro-Israel and plans to move Argentina's embassy to Jerusalem. There he is, waving the Israeli flag just a few days before the election. Argentina is another example of what happens when a country embraces far-left lunacy. Finally, here is a calmer Milei in an interview a few months ago, warning the West about what not to do and how you can fight back.
Que nunca abracen las ideas del socialismo, que nunca se dejen seducir por el canto de las sirenas de la justicia social, que no se dejen atrapar por esa frase nefasta que donde hay una anciana sin derecho, pero que eso no se hace solo. Para eso hay que estar preparado y hay que dar la batalla cultural día a día. Y que hay que tener cuidado porque ellos no tienen problema en meterse adentro del Estado y aplicar las técnicas de Gramsci, seduciendo a artistas, seduciendo, o sea, la cultura, seduciendo a los medios de comunicación, o metiéndose en los contenidos de la educación. Hay que tener mucho cuidado, hay que cortarles el financiamiento y hay que hacerlos competir a la par.
Tens of thousands marched through London. This, the first large-scale pro-Palestinian demonstration since ugly scenes in the capital on Armistice Day. Leaflets handed out by police warned anyone inciting hatred would be arrested. Along the route, police from forces around the country had been brought in to support the Met.
Well, they're doing their job and we're doing our job. It's not a hate march because you can see it's really peaceful.
Nothing's going to happen. Everything's fine. It's peaceful.
But away from the main march, a separate, much smaller protest organised by Hizb ut-Tahrir, the same group that held a demo last month where the word jihad was chanted. There were tears for Palestinian children, but police on alert. 2 women were pulled over by officers and asked to translate their banners.
The best translation would be, who will roll up the sleeves for heaven?
But without an independent interpreter on the ground, police asked the women to wait. This is an example of the difficult balancing act police have, allowing free speech, but not allowing anything that incites hatred or promotes terrorism. After several minutes of confusion, they arrested them.
You're under arrest on suspicion under Section 4A religious, Section 4A aggravated public order.
How can you arrest us for something you don't know what it means, though?
They were taken to a police station for questioning. Back on the main march, demonstrators said protests will continue until there's a permanent ceasefire, not just a temporary halt to the fighting.
It's a pause, it's not a ceasefire. We want Israel to stop bombing Gaza. That's why we're out. We want peace, that's what we're out for.
And organisers defended the rights of the protesters.
We have very clear laws that define what is and what is not acceptable. The police's job is to implement those laws. They have been policing these marches. They have had to arrest a handful of people. We know they're under huge political pressure, including people who are trying
trying to conflate anti-Semitism with legitimate advocacy for Palestinian rights.
But those suspected of crossing a line were taken away by officers. Proactive policing after criticism by some of too little intervention at previous protests. And at the end, a small group causing trouble faced a robust response. Becky Johnson, Sky News, Central London.
This isn't your typical home flipping show.
Dramatic scenes coming into us from Dublin. There's buses set on fire, there's police cars set on fire, the Garda out in force saying that a hooligan element, they're calling them far-right thugs, but of course that would be what they would call them. The reason for the riot, and it's a mini riot, it has to be said, is because there was a stabbing that took place this afternoon outside a school. 3 children under the age of 6 were stabbed. One of them has now apparently been released, but one is still in hospital with some very severe injuries. You can see the violence on the streets there. There's a migrant hostel believed to be being set on fire as well. The Garda are trying to fight back, but it's running battles in the streets of Dublin with people just saying enough is enough. One of the people who actually is in position in hospital is the assailant himself. The Garda say they're not looking for anybody else, and the reason for this particular outrage is because they're saying the people got word that the man in question who has been arrested or is wanted in connection with the stabbing is in fact an Algerian migrant. We have not been able to confirm that yet. But don't forget, you can get in touch with the show on all the socials at Talk TV and on the phones 0344 499 1000. Calls cost national rate, of course. Peter Whittle joins me in the studio, the founder of Newcastle Forum. Peter, a very, very good evening to you. Welcome.
Afternoon, evening.
Evening. Yeah, I know, it's hard to keep up, isn't it? It's all kicking off in Dublin. We've got migration things to talk about. We've got the whole situation with
In the beginning of this journey of heart disease and living with diabetes for my dad, it was very stressful, but we got there, and he's here, and it's wonderful.
Thelema, or sometimes pronounced as Thelema, is a religious philosophy best thought of as an umbrella term. It covers a lot of different areas, and its meaning on an individual level can vary greatly depending on the person and their beliefs as well as their practices. It can function as a system of mysticism, a philosophy, a religion, or any combination thereof. The reason even a simple definition becomes such a complicated thing to unpack is the individual and occult aspect of its practice and adherence. In this video, I will be discussing what it is, where it comes from, and how some people interpret it. As a magical practitioner and Thelemite myself, I'm particularly interested in doing this topic justice. So I hope you enjoy it and get something out of it, so let's get going. Thelema was founded by the complex and controversial occult figure Aleister Crowley. He was a ceremonial magician, a poet, painter, mountain climber, writer, and prophet of a new religious movement. When I say prophet, I don't mean Crowley is revered the same way Christians view Jesus. Crowley was the delivery person, but not the message itself. Those who align themselves with the framework of Thelema seek their own path and their own divinity within. Although Crowley was an interesting historical figure, it is not about emulating or trying to be him. It's about being yourself in the fullest sense. So, where does all of this come from? Aleister Crowley was on a honeymoon in Egypt with his wife, Rose Crowley. It was on this trip that he received a channeled text called Liber vel legis, or the Book of the Law. This text was not Crowley speaking as himself, but rather a being, entity, or part of his consciousness known as Aiwass dictated this text through him. Practitioners have a wide range of beliefs around what this book is and what it means. Many people believe this was simply a part of Crowley's consciousness speaking on the nature of divinity, while others believe it to be from an external source. Crowley, at the time of the reception of this book, was a Buddhist, and echoes of that, or perhaps a reaction to that, can be found throughout the book itself, among a vast wealth of other occult thought and philosophy.
It's so easy to print at Staples. Now I can make a bigger impression. Printing made too easy? Let's find out.
I'm going to be flipping through a couple of different versions of the Book of the Law while I talk to you about this book. At the time of the reception of the Book of the Law, Crowley didn't realize the significance or importance of the text at all. It took him a while to even getting around to publishing it. The book turned out to be incredibly important. It is the central and sacred holy text of Thelema. The Book of the Law proclaims the arrival of a new aeon, the Aeon of Horus. There is a belief that different times throughout human history can be divided into aeons. Each aeon is accompanied by its own magical formula. The Aeon of Horus is spelled out by the Book of the Law and is characterized by humanity leaving behind the tyranny of Abrahamic religions and entering a time of greater consciousness and self-actualization. The Book of the Law is an incredibly beautiful channel text. Of course, beauty is a subjective thing, and not everyone would agree with me, but for some, including myself, this book is like a chord to the soul. This book, as well as other Thelemic holy books, are arguably not meant to be read as unquestioned fact or works to be followed in blind faith. They demand introspection and exploration. They are an invitation. It is poetry that demands authenticity and thoughtfulness from the reader. The seemingly endless depths serenade you to pursue an
Finished transcribing the first chapter of the Book of the Law, honoring my father Crowley, celebrating my father Crowley. 3 chapters just before December 1st, great feast to honor my Father Crowley.